everyone. So today is a perfect day for a bit of a repotting exercise here and also a troubleshooting of your plant. It just started to rain outside, so I'm glad I'm kind of like safe and warm and dry in here. But I've had this beautiful plant. It is well, it used to be known as a Senecio barbertonicus, but now it's called a Kleinia barbertonica because Senecio is one of those genera that had been kind of blown up and reclassified by certain taxonomists. In fact, if you're interested in that, I have an older video where I talked to one of the taxonomists who had reclassified some of the members within the Senecio genus, if that kind of plant nerdiness is interesting to you. But we're not going to focus on that today. And by the way, I'm pretty sure that this is a Kleinia barbertonica just by the look of it, the flowers. However, when I got this plant, which I picked up in a much smaller size at the farmer's market in New York City, this didn't really have any name to it. But I really love, you could see that this is kind of like almost like a shrubby bush. I can imagine where this is naturally growing, which is more on the eastern coast of Africa. So in Mozambique, where I've actually got to have the pleasure of spending quite a bit of time with my friend Alan there. But yeah, you could see that there's parts of it that are kind of drying off, and that's totally normal. So you see this kind of, I'm gonna make quite a mess today. So what I really wanna do is kind of clean this up and troubleshoot this a little bit. And what I mean by that is, you know, I come back here to flock maybe, you know, every week and a half to 2 weeks. So I'm not always on top of the plant care, which is okay because most of these plants don't require, you know, kind of the hovering plant parenting needs. Like this Kleinia or the Senecio is quite happy without having to be watered every single day of the week, for example. But what I noticed is when I came back and I was watering it, the potting medium, and I'll show you this right here, was basically repelling the water. So, you know, this is similar to what happened with, if you recall, an older video I did with troubleshooting this Hoya obovata, and I'm going to show this to you here because that was exactly the problem of this Hoya obovata. So I'll show you some shots of when it looked really sallow colored and puckered. The leaves are puckering and wrinkling, and it looks like an entirely new plant now. And you just really needed to work the root ball a little bit. So I think what I'm going to do here is this could use a little bit of trimming and shaping, for instance, but also just kind of take this out and see if I could like work the root ball. If you recall last time with the Hoya, I soaked it in water with a little bit of eco-friendly soap just to kind of like re-wet that root ball, break up some of the clods of soil, and I think I'm gonna try to refrain from doing that today. I'll see if I need to do that. I might just kind of break it up and dry it up a little bit, spray it with some water, see what we could do. I haven't pulled this out yet, so I can't really tell you what we're about to do. But I am going to, I guess, start on this. It looks like there's like a little hickory nut in here. I'm not sure what that is. I might have actually had this outside at some point. But you can see like there's some stuff, it's looking a little, you know, it's lost the turgidity that it would normally have, I believe. And you can see some of the dried flowers are here as well. So this is in the Asteraceae family, so it's like in the daisy family, so it gets these nice little yellow pom-poms. Just taking some of this dry stuff out. That'll fall as it goes, but oh yeah, so here we go. So yeah, this is part of the problem. I mean, the planter size is perfectly all right for this, but let me just kind of take this out. I need to be an octopus. I need like a third, fourth, fifth, sixth, seventh, and eighth hand. So yeah, this is pretty dry. I mean, you could see this. This is the extra potting medium, which seems fine. It is dry. I mean, I haven't watered this, and I didn't attempt to water it because, you know, after all, it was just repelling the water anyway. So this is not so bad. I'm going to just slowly work this. And again, you could put this into like water with a little eco-friendly soap. That's usually some of my techniques just to kind of break the soil up. Oh, it is really dry. This wasn't showing too many signs of malaise, but it's also because this plant is one of those really hardy plants that, you know, you could get away with it for a very long time, and then, you know, 2 years down the line, you come and you look at the plant and you're like, ooh, that looks ill. Well, it's probably something you could have dealt with a little sooner rather than later. So I want to make sure with the way that it's so dry, I don't want to break off any of the roots. And I could see now this is the main root ball here. And the problem with this is if it constantly repels the water and then it goes down the sides where the roots aren't even established, then this plant is actually getting no water at all. And if you start to see it drop its leaves, you may say, oh, I watered it too much, because you're actually watering it quite frequently. And in this case, it's actually the roots are not even getting any water. It was really sunny yesterday. It is you know, now spring officially. So the other thing that I'm going to be doing with this plant is giving it some fertilizer. And that's not something that you have to always do with your succulents. It's not a frequent habit. Although I've met some horticulturists which, you know, just say just a little nutrients on a regular basis. Basically saying that you have to be the nutrients and all the life within the soil for plants that are indoors, essentially. All right, so this is kind of where I'm going with it. I might try to find, you know, some bowl or bucket and just try to soak that root ball a little bit. All right, I got this little pail. Picked this up at the auction house, actually. And this could come in handy because it can keep it up, right? Woo! So yeah, I'm just gonna soak that in there a little bit. All right, so some of this substrate, I'm not sure if I want to save all this substrate or not. It feels really dry. I might end up composting this. So I also want to put a bit more perlite, and I might use what I have left of the bonsai mix here, which I really love. I've been loving this product for succulents or epiphytic plants as well. So I've been mixing a lot of that in there. And then I have perlite here. You can see I have some in some containers over here. And this is, again, just this kind of puffed stone, and it's very lightweight, and it allows for water to pass through more readily. And then I also have some charcoal as well. I don't think I need it for this, but I just brought it out because that's something that you could also do with your own mix. And then I have some cactus and succulent mix, which also has perlite in it already. So I'm just gonna go for this. I have a little spray bottle as well because the perlite could get a little dusty. With this plant, because of the situation in the past, with the potting medium drying out, I think I'm probably going to do as much of a 50-50 blend with the perlite, and I'll probably use some, like I said, some of this bonsai mix. And I'm just kind of eyeballing this. You can measure it out if you want, but I don't think that's really necessary. I also have some bird seed here that I didn't put out in the bird feeders yet, so I'm not going to be using that in the potting medium though. All right, so this is kind of what it's looking like. You see it has it's much more perlite in it, so it's going to be more drainage friendly, if you will. So I'm going to work with that. And the planter pot that I had was just totally fine. I mean, this is really tall, so if you had it in something smaller or less heavy duty, then you risk like the plant kind of tipping over. So you can see what I'm doing here. Just put more moisture in this medium as well, so when it goes in, it's not so dry. Some of these roots are probably like, oh, thank God, some water. I haven't had water in a long time. Okay, so I'm gonna bring this and add this to the planter. Yes, very nice. We're just gonna make loads of this stuff. Here we go, bring this back out. I should say when I'm putting it in the water as well, I'm not putting it in ice cold water or anything like that. You don't want to shock the plant. Most plants can't stand ice cold water, so I'm giving it more like a lukewarm water. And actually that water helps break it up a little bit too, which is nice. So I'm glad I did that. So you can see some of these roots now coming out like this. I don't know if you could see that up close. And this is, you know, a plant that obviously I never grew up with. I grew up in northeastern Pennsylvania, so I didn't grow up with this plant. But as I was doing a bit more research about this Kleinia barbertonica, it's actually used as a dewormer in cattle out in Africa, which I thought was really interesting. So there are some certain studies corroborating that as well. Some of the chemistry within the plant actually acting as a dewormer, natural dewormer. So really love to find some of that cultural and medicinal history that comes with some of these house plants, you know, plants that many of us haven't grown up with and don't have that kind of connection with them. So I always find that really fascinating. So I'm just gonna grab this and start putting it in, working it around. Oh, much better. It's really nice to be able to put your fingers through the soil and not feel like you're hitting a stone. I feel like because I have this underneath, I could mess more. Definitely not the cleanest I've ever been when I'm working some of these plants. So I'm gonna water this in. And when I water this in, I'm also going to use a nice organic fertilizer here. So I have this cactus and succulent fertilizer, as you can see. So I'm just gonna get my watering can and work that in. So I'm gonna try to reach over here, but typically what I'd like to do is just put a little of that fertilizer in here, swoosh it around, and then I'll just work that in to this succulent. I'll use the rest for some of my other plants. But yeah, I want to be able to water this as thoroughly as possible till there's water coming out on the base, and you know, give that all those air pockets. It's going to fill up with the water. It's going to bring fresh oxygen down. I'm going to do a little compression on the top, and the other thing I'm going to do is just take out some of this brown stuff. I could have probably done that before, but, and you might want to wear gloves. Some folks might have an allergy to plants within the Asteraceae family. That's not uncommon, actually. And that's why I always think it's nice to know the family of your plants. I mean, that's one of the reasons why I think it's actually nice to know the families of your plants, because you might be like allergic to some of the plants that are in your habitat where you live, and they might be in the family of Asteraceae, and you're like, oh, you know, I get a dermatitis, or I get a little stuffy-eyed, and you might find out, oh, some of my succulents that I have indoors, especially if they're blooming or if they give this kind of chemistry off of their leaves, like maybe they have some type of chemical within their leaves that could actually cause like dermatitis, contact dermatitis. So you want to know that and know that about yourself. I mean, sometimes that's how we find out that we're allergic to something. But yeah, so I'm going to take out all this dried bits. I'm going to see what the plant looks like. And I think I might actually come in here and then just like clip off a few things. Like I might clip this at the base and use this one. It's a little thicker. Like just like this. Some of these dried bits. Even this one right here. Just to give it a little more shape. Yeah, I think that's fine. And this seems a little yellow to me as well, and I think that's partially because it was right next to the southern window and it's just not getting water and nutrients. And I surmise that if I pull this away from the window a little bit, give it a break from some of that heavy sunlight, which we don't have any of that heavy sunlight today, but if I give that a break and make sure that this is getting some of the appropriate water now that we've like actually worked that root ball, I think this is going to green up a little bit. This has never like been a green plant. This always has that more chartreusey kind of yellow gold color. Really beautiful, like I said, yellow flowers as well, kind of like a little yellow pom-poms, almost like a dandelion, if we want to be a little bit more mundane. But yeah, that looks good. And I think what I'm going to do is just put a little topping on this. I love the look. Let me just show you with my hand. So you can see that's more or less what the bonsai mixture looks like. And it's this expanded clay and shale. You know, if you're ever doing a green roof, oftentimes they'll use that expanded shale in the green roof. So I've been kind of topping this off in some of my succulent mixtures, but also using the bonsai mix in the succulent mixture as well. But I think it looks really nice with this terracotta planter as well. And it does darken up, obviously, as you water it in. Well, I'm going to be doing quite a bit of cleaning up here, but that's the plant. We'll probably see more of like I said, it didn't look so bad. Like this plant wasn't looking bad, but like I shared, you know, certain plants, especially those that are a little less robust than this one, will show signs of malaise sooner rather than later. And this Kleinia definitely was one of those hero plants that don't really show any sign of weakness until like the last minute. So this was a bit more of a proactive approach on my part. All right, there you have it. We get to move it back to its old place. Stay tuned on Plant One On Me for more botanical tours, talks, and how-tos. And if you're looking to further your knowledge on the plant kingdom, then have a look at our various online courses from Troubleshoot Your Houseplants to the Houseplant Masterclass. Additionally, we have a second channel we started last year called Flock Finger Lakes, where we cover more on outdoor gardening, habitat restoration, agroforestry, and even more. So check that out if that interests you. Otherwise, we'll see you in the next episode.